While the China virus keeps ravaging the world, we see more and more newspaper articles condemning America while praising China. And through the lines, you can feel that these people rejoice the very idea that maybe one day China will be the dominating power. And they indulge in the thought that Western democracy may die and Chinese authoritarianism may take hold. So I wonder how our elites actually think about us and about our freedoms. And I found an institute that is briefing the officials on the EU level. And I thought that's a good way to where to go to find out more. They have published a brief for the coronavirus aftermath with a special focus on the smart city implementation through Chinese tech companies. The institute is the European Union Institute for Security Studies. They call themselves autonomous or independent, but of course they are not. They are totally funded by the EU, as the name already suggests, and also they are headed through the management board by the position of the High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and security policy. The position is currently held by Josep Borrell. His predecessor, Federica Mogherini, was also in charge of that institute. So it is tightly linked. For you to understand the brief, you must understand the concept of a smart city, or let's say you must read the definition of it, the merchandising terminology, because it isn't actually a real thing. It is, as you will see, it is a very fuzzy merchandising marketing terminology, and according to Wikipedia it says due to the breadth of technologies that have been implemented under the smart city label, it is difficult to distill a precise definition of a smart city. So even Wikipedia says it, and then they give a number of definitions, of which I will only read the first from Deakin and Elware. They list 4 factors that contribute to the definition of a smart city. So you have contributions to a definition. That's how vague it all is. So the application of a wide range of electronic and digital technologies to communities and cities. So again, the application of electronics, digital, blah, blah, something that links to cities. The second one is the use of ICT, that is basically just technology again, to transform life and working environments within the region. 3 is the embedding of such information and communication technologies in government system. That's the full name of the ICT. That's information and communication technologies, anything that blinks. And 4th is the territorialization of practices that brings ICTs and people together to enhance the innovation and knowledge that they offer. So now your public servant will have an email address. And that's basically what it is. It's a fancy schmancy word for whatever blinks, something that's to do with the city, things that blink in the city administrators trying to digitalize standard forms and so forth. That's basically all it is. The main author of the brief is Alice Ekman, and I will run you shortly through her biography so you get a feel, because we are reading this document in order to find out what the EU thinks about China, the threat to democracy and authoritarianism, and so forth. So Alice Ekman has been the senior analyst in charge of the Asia portfolio of the European Union Institute for Security Studies since September 2019. She covers foreign policy and security developments in the Asian region, including in China, the Korean Peninsula, Japan, India, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, that's ASEAN. At the EU Institute for Security Studies, EUISS, Alice also manages regular Track 1-5 dialogues, whatever those are, with the EU partners in Asia, and coordinates the EU member committee of the Council for Security Cooperation in the Asia Pacific. She holds a master in international relations, economics, and anthropology China focus from the London School of Economics, and a PhD in international relations from Sciences Po, and is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. Okay, this is the section what I actually wanted to come to, and this is The London School of Economics used to be a very respectable school, and it is to some degree still today. However, you can see the kind of courses that they are offering right now. Douglas Murray sometimes says that whenever a study course is called studies, you know it's fake. Like gender studies, whiteness studies, and so forth, you know it's crap. I have the same issue with courses that are called management or international something. And most of her stuff is really superficial. And you will find in that brief, she has a very superficial knowledge of the things she actually tries to talk about. And I actually stumbled over her brief by researching the previous High Representative for Foreign Relations and Security Policies, Federica Mogherini. And once you research the EU and how things work there, you feel a bit pity about them, because they don't really produce good things. They make prohibitions for a lot of people, for millions and millions of people, and they don't really understand what's going on. They are people who rush from one conference room to the next, and then they just sit down, make a very sophisticated face, not as if they understand what's going on, and they try to memorize all these fancy schmancy words that fly to them through different briefs and so forth. And then they try to go to the next conference room and say somehow what had been told to them. This is intellectually, it is very difficult to do. You need to keep your concentration up, no alcohol for you, except for Mr. Juncker. And I understand that these are actually very smart people, and I don't have any hard feelings against Mrs. Ackman. It's just that I believe the Mandarin, or the fact that she speaks 2 languages fluently, that millions of people speak fluently, namely English and Mandarin at the same time, that this is her only tangible qualification for anything. Outside of that, she can actually do nothing but taking notes and report back from one place to the other. And this is what most EU officials are about. So this is not hard feelings against this woman, who I believe is a very pretty and very smart woman. This is just saying that maybe we should have fewer of these people in high positions. They should maybe just do something else, because what they produce are laws that are not terribly informed. And you will find in the briefing that she doesn't really understand what a smart city is. And she does not say, well, actually, that's just a fuzzy word, but she tries to look knowledgeable when she isn't. And this is also, of course, how all the laws and the briefs and so forth at the European Union are made. These people don't have a deeper understanding what they are talking about, and this is something that shines through the entire brief. And this is part of the reason why I want to discuss this brief, because at the same time it gives an insight into a potential affinity for authoritarianism, but also it shows the superficial knowledge of these people, of the topics they try to talk about. And this is baked into the system. If you have too much power, if the power is aggregated in one place, like in Washington, also talking about too many things for too many people, this is baked in, that these people must be over-challenged, no matter how smart they are. If they are supposed to read through and listen to millions and millions of different topics all at once, barely understanding what's going on, just trying to memorize the words as they pass by, they cannot take control of the actual topics they have to resolve. And the laws they produce must be bad ultimately because of that. Now let's dive into the actual brief. Remember again that a smart city is anything that blinks, the form that you fill up on a website of your government officials, as well as just some email address, whatever, the traffic lights. That's supposedly all smart. And so the label is comprehensive in terms of it just encompasses anything that is a gadget, that is electronic, that runs on electricity. If China is today investing in the smart city industry in a comprehensive way, including mobility and ecological aspects, it first and foremost developed a strong focus on and expertise in the public security dimension. In fact, China's definition of a smart city was initially assimilated to safe city, and the development of surveillance networks for the state security authorities. It is mainly, but not exclusively, this safe dimension of smart cities that a host of Chinese companies are offering to foreign countries and cities, and the one that will be analyzed in this brief. Okay, so far this is just descriptive, but reading through the entire brief, I felt that she is using too much too neutral language, talking about the tyranny that China is. The mass surveillance is just security and so forth. I'm not saying that she espouses this view, but she's very, very neutral in her terminology for most of the time. And I think this is because she also wants to go back to China and so forth, and does not want to be quoted in a negative way. But maybe at some point one should decide where one stands. She will address the tyrannical aspects later in the brief as well, but also in just really light terms, not to upset all these Chinese thugs. So the next section will link the COVID-19 crisis to the smart city concept, because China did use the crisis to exploit the situation for the sake of introducing new measures. And even authoritarian people in China were a bit rankled, I assume, about the advancement of these technologies. So now they had an excuse for doing this, for having drones that tell people not to smoke or whatever. And this is how it reads. The COVID-19 crisis is accelerating China's smart city development in 3 ways. First, since December 2019, the Chinese government, in cooperation with several tech companies, has stepped up the use and testing of several major smart city functions on its national territory. These include artificial intelligence surveillance cameras, drones. These include artificial intelligence surveillance camera drones. This is all one. So then we are talking about drones that use cameras that use artificial intelligence to detect a face, for example, or other problems, pattern recognition, facial recognition technology, big data collection and analysis, tracking apps, and QR codes linking travel history and medical data. And the end of the sentence already gives away her lack of competence in the entire field, because the QR code, you all know them, they are the links that that you see everywhere. You can photo with your mobile phone, and then it's taking you to the website. So the QR codes are not linking you to anything and so forth. You can say that the technology is somehow linking different things together, but ultimately it is meaningless in the sentence as she uses it. And you can tell that she uses medical data because this is a sensitive issue in Europe, not so much in America, but in continental Europe. Medical data is seen as sensitive. It can be exploited by a tyrant for different reasons. You may keep your health issues for yourself, but somebody can exploit your asthma or your diabetes or whatsoever to kill you without making it look like a murder. So this is seen as a sensitive piece of information, and of course she wants to say that the new technology is linking different pieces of information together. Yes, but likewise you could have just said the electric grid is linking homes together and so forth. The way she does it is giving away that she does not understand half of the words she uses here. Facial recognition technology, big data collection and analysis, tracking apps, and QR codes. The QR codes just thrown in there give away that she would not know what she actually means. And she also describes this pressure process during the crisis, how this was exploited. And again, she is using very neutral terms, and even gives an apology for the government to ultimately crack down on its citizens. So the Chinese government has also upped the pressure on private companies to hand over sensitive data for anti-epidemic purposes, something which the latter were often reluctant to do in recent years on the grounds that it could go against their commercial interests. Okay, again, this is a kind of dog whistle to all these lefties. Oh, the interests of these companies were just purely commercial. So she does not mention that this may have been, the commercial aspect may have been an excuse not to cooperate with the tyranny. Okay. Maybe they just said, well, that's the medical data of our customers. We will need that in future for whatever reason that is, and we don't want this to be in the hands of another competitor or a different country, some different government in, I don't know, South Korea. They may have 100 of excuses, but now the crisis was used to gain the databases anyway. She's spinning it like, oh yeah, for pure greedy commercial reasons, they were reluctant to hand over the hard drives. In addition, tracking apps and devices, many of which were not fully functional before the crisis, have been streamlined and improved to some extent. With the onset of the crisis, the Chinese government was able to accelerate the collection and sharing of data from both public and private sources. So, on the other hand, the government now has more control over the data. Such sharing was already in place before, but the emergency has facilitated the further integration of data across different authorities and departments at both a local and central level. So what she is witnessing is a further aggregation of power, and she is phrasing it in the most understanding, neutral terminology. This continues with the coronavirus has also indirectly helped the local governments to further test and fine-tune the social credit system, which had started before the crisis in various provinces and is planned to be fully implemented and unified nationwide by the end of 2020. This national reputation system is likely to increasingly form part of China's smart city model. So here again, barely any criticism. In October 2019, Xi Jinping encouraged the use of blockchain technology to develop a new type of smart city. And the use of such technologies by local and central governments has proliferated during the pandemic to aid a number of processes, including the tracking of medical supplies and information. Now you see a shared problem of the EU and China. If you have too much power aggregated, you must be over-challenged because you have to look into the problems of too many people at the same time. And so you can guess already that Xi Jinping knows absolutely nothing about blockchain whatsoever. But he, I give him the benefit of the doubt, may have used the term in a correct fashion. Ms. Ackman, Alice Ekman, she most certainly does not know what the hell she's talking about. So I give you some cues. The word process is very often used if somebody types something he does not know the proper word of. This is just a weak one. There is a more damaging one, which is that she thinks blockchain can be used to track medical supplies and information. Blockchain is a distributed ledger that cannot be changed unnoticed. This is why it's used for cryptocurrency, for instance. It can make sense for city administrators to use blockchains if there is no data protection, as it is the case in China. So one office may save information on this distributed ledger, and a different office can use the same set of data, and both offices can be sure that no change on the set of data will occur without anybody noticing. That is why blockchain, in principle, can be used in the city administration, but it cannot be used to track medical supplies, whatever that even means, and information. So it cannot track anything. And this is a tell-all that Alice Ekman, like most of these EU officials, are not educated in the fields they are talking about. During the COVID-19 crisis, mutual surveillance among city dwellers has been encouraged by the central government and implemented by local CPC committees and at the lowest levels by residual communities. So that's people spying on each other, Stasi-like. That's encouragement by the elites. I mean, she has lived in China. She's probably very comfortable with people disappearing and ending up in penalty systems. The Western media is talking about the Uyghurs. At least 1 million people are believed to be held in these penalty system labor camps. She's totally happy with that, I think. But of course, I cannot mind read. It's just the entire phraseology. Okay, people are encouraged to spy on one another, And this had, of course, been, in my view, deteriorated during the COVID-19 crisis. In her view, it's just intensified. These are directly inherited from the Mao era, where the party was present at all levels, and local representations served as a two-way interface. Bottom-up surveillance at grassroots level reported to the party, and top-down dissemination of the party's key messages and rules was transmitted to grassroots party representation. So yes, you had all these goons started like spying on their neighbors, reporting upwards, and of course downwards there was ideological messaging from the elites. This grid-style social management system is shaping China's smart city architecture, as well as the social credit system that is currently under development and still Maoist. And these people are using technology, of course. And if smart city means just anything that blinks, anything that has to do with technology, then of course that's also then integrated. Since the end of the Hu Jintao era from 2002 to 2012, the Chinese authorities have invested heavily in research on big data, have developed a special approach which links big data with social management. In other words, the specific use of big data by government authorities for various purposes, including the anticipation and prevention of protest movements. Increasingly, cloud systems used by the police mine individuals' data, including social media accounts, in order to identify potentially threatening trends for predictive policing. And I also feel this for the West because Facebook and social medias have proved themselves to be rather shady, and they try to police your opinions. So I believe what we will see is what we in Europe call soft power. Soft power means that there is no hard repercussions for something. Usually this is applied to military politics. My fear is that this soft power approach will be parlayed to the police work and the imprisonment system. So instead of saying let's punish the real criminals, the hard, tough guys, we rather go after everybody a little bit. This is the mindset of the left. They always think of the broken window effect, and then they try to nudge everybody into a nice behavior, and nice means everything as they like it. And this is, of course, resembling the social credit system in China, where they are operating with small incentives to entice people for good behavior, and also they have little punishments rolled out for your average citizen, not the hard criminals, but your average citizen is constantly hected into a good behavior. And I believe that Facebook, Amazon, and so forth are trying the same thing. They try to discourage you from seeing and reading and listening to things that they do not deem adequate for you. So slowly, even if you are looking for oppositional information, your attention will be distracted. They know that everybody has some interests outside of politics. Everybody likes either sports or music or whatever, and you will be attracted to fluff. This is, I think, how Silicon Valley will parlay this entire social credit system approach, the soft power approach, to America and the entire Western world. And this is my big fear. You can stop every opposition in the tracks if you control the attention of 90% of the population. No matter how committed the 10% are, if they are not getting through with their message to the 90%, all opposition, legitimate and illegitimate, will be stopped in their tracks. And in Europe we have this trend that the elites are transgressing the democratical constitutional borders or to their power, the limits of their power, and they justify that always with a delegitimate part of the opposition. You will always find some nutcases, and the powerful have found a way to point the attention to some nutcases all the time, so as to delegitimize everybody. And if Facebook, Google, and so forth work together to turn the attention of the 90% either to fluff or to the actual nutcases. Nobody, no matter what their intentions are, can get their message through. So this is how I believe people in the West try to smooth out democracy. Of course, the Marxists make use of everything they get a hand on, including, of course, the technology around them. So she writes, under Xi Jinping, China has further accelerated the technological investments initiated under his predecessor. The current president advocates an evolving adaptive form of Marxism which always develops along with the social realities and technology of the time. Interesting here is that she uses the neutral term president, which, you know what, I would also suggest you always use, no matter if you talk about Putin or Assad or other terrible people, no question. If you speak about people you don't like, even then, in particular, you should just stick to the official titles or shorten the titles if they are so long as to say High Representative of the Foreign Policy Affairs and the relations, blah. If the title is not too long, just use the official title, no matter what. But it's interesting because this kind of elites or media types and so forth, they usually use tainted words for people they don't like. So once it goes into the neutral, you kind of get suspicious if they are still amenable to Marxism, for example. The CPC, that's the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, the Communist Party of China, whatever, will continue to invest in technologies for ideological and political reasons. It sees them as a useful tool to maintain the one-party system, as well as for economic reasons. China's tech companies are key for the national economy to continue to move up the value chain and for generating new sources of growth, their internationalization. So in other words, they don't want to fall behind economically, and opting out of technology as such would not even be an option if they have their power their grip on power in mind. Reactions to it differ significantly from one country to another and sometimes within countries, as well as between political elites and general population. So here she is honest. What is certain is that significant perception gaps exist and that there are diverging views on China's smart city technologies. While the model is increasingly perceived as a threat to liberal values, translated, she means Western values, but we are now made to believe that the Democratic Party is in charge of whatever we shall wish or not wish. So liberal values is something that we all are kind of expected to uphold, which is the party platform of one party. Anyway, perceived as a threat to liberal values in democratic environments, especially in the US and Europe. At the same time, it appeals to a significant number of other foreign actors and countries. So despite the etymological correction that I just had made with the liberal adjective, what she means with that sentence is that Western values, the Western political system stands against this kind of use of technology that surveys everybody to the minutiae. And of course, other countries don't have these concerns. At least their leaders don't have these concerns. Of course, all countries have smart, libertarian-minded people in them that are concerned with these things, that do not want to be surveyed and so forth. But because we in the Western world uphold Western values still to some degree, she claims, and I hope she is right, that in Europe the appeal of China's smart city model is rather limited. To date, the most noticeable Chinese smart city projects and named as such on European soil is located outside the EU in Serbia. In April 2019, Huawei launched a smart city pilot project in the city of Niš, which is planned to include smart lighting and mobility services. So also, the lighting, I think there's also a project in London that works quite well. It is something that you do not need to integrate into a large administration, but the lighting is orchestrated with a smart system in London, and that can also be understood as a smart system product. But again, smart system is just an overarching terminology marketing term for all of these things, and you can have a smart lighting system for managing your traffic without all the integrated spy software. Of course, China has an incentive to claim that all of these different technologies are somehow interlinked when they are not, and they are trying to sell it as a bundle, as a smart city idea. And there's a new initiative out called the Telecommunications New Technology and Equipment Maintenance for Developing Countries. It is sponsored by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, which included lectures on China's communication network construction plan, 4G, 5G, mobile communication, new technology, Internet of Things, smart city, cloud computing, big data, new standards and technologies of optical fiber and optical cables, as well as other advanced technologies. In addition, the program included visits to established Chinese tech companies such as CICT, Achelink, and China Mobile. Okay, let me just run you through some of those words. For example, 4G, 5G. 4G is your current mobile phone standard. 5G will be the next thing. And what she fears, and what's usually voiced outside the paper as well, is that China may have a first move advantage because they don't have these strict economic considerations that we have in the West. They just use the taxpayer money. And they build some radio stations, even if it's not profitable yet. We will see 5G coming anyway, I can tell you. And this is what the Chinese also see. So this is something that's going to happen. We will have new radio stations that allow more data to be loaded on your phone and up from your phone. So this is something that's going to happen anyway, and the fear is that they may be the first that have the devices out for these new radio stations. I don't fear this. I don't fear that the citizens in the Southeast Asian countries or wherever that is developing countries, that they fall in love with these new devices and will stick with them forever. Huawei isn't a brand you fall in love with, okay? If Apple and Microsoft and so forth come up with their own products and the products are better because they see there are clients that have actually money, eventually they will have their own stuff. And in the end, it is about quality. This is something she, as an administrator and a strategist, will not understand. Sometimes there is just this quality thing, or sometimes not even that. It's the emotional attachment, like the Apple stuff. Actually, almost everything Apple does is not so sensational technological wise, but it's appealing to people. So this is something that can create a market and will ultimately decide whether or not Western companies will take a hold in places that have the 5G network earlier. And there's a lot of stuff that suggests again that she does not really know what she means, because I did even stop a bit in between with the phrase 4G, 5G, mobile communication, new technology. What the heck does she even mean? And there's also technologies of optical fiber and optical cables. Again, these are so vague words like processes and so forth that give away that she absolutely does not know the words she's using. There's Internet of Things. That is the part where the different gadgets talk to each other. I also see a limit to that. I understand that there's still some additional comfort to be had with your fridge talking to your microwave, maybe. I see a limit to this because I don't believe that there is an additional comfort to be had by having to type in your PIN number only to into your mobile device, for example, to turn on the heater. There's just a natural limit, and I think this is a bit hyped. We will see in the end. I also have no idea why we use the automated window lift function in our cars. So maybe I might be wrong, but I see there is a limit. And complex things tend to break sooner, and you don't want the trouble with the repair all the time. Then there's cloud computing, that's Dropbox, Google Drive, and so forth. Big data, hell, I mean, come on. So, I mean, they are giving lectures on big data, who doesn't? Then new standards, they're usually open standards for the sake of convenience. I mean, if they were not open, if you could not read them anyway, they were not standards. So there's no risk in China having some standards. Of course, China is pandering first and foremost to other authoritarians. And Ms. Alice Ekman notes 36 countries have received training on topics such as the positive energy public opinion guidance system, a euphemism for censorship. And here, this is one of the few places where she actually offers some criticism of China. China also offers training courses to officials from developing countries on ethnic policies and practices for developing countries. This relates to counterterrorism, on an area where China makes heavy use of smart city tools and tries to position itself as an example for other countries. So here she's right back using euphemisms, or at least neutral terms herself. The ethnic policies and practices for developing countries were supposedly counter-terrorism, and we all know it's just counter-opposition. The COVID-19 crisis has revealed in clearer terms a trend that was emerging since 2013, increasing competition between national governance models and narratives, pitting the presumed strength of the Chinese governance systems against the presumed weakness of Western models. With the promotion of China's smart city model abroad, this competition is also emerging at a local level between different models of urban governance and different degrees and types of surveillance. Here, this is one of the few cases where she is again critical of China. She speaks of presumed strength of China and presumed weakness of the West. This could be because she is aware, as part of her constant trips to China, that she is still somehow employed by a government that at least pays lip service to freedom. So it may be unauthentic, but I don't want to mind read too much. The more interesting part here is that she speaks of the local level, that there is a competition maybe on the local level. So she fears, and maybe quite rightly so, that mayors may be approached by the Chinese to say, well, your traffic jam problem could be solved if we install some cameras and count the cars and then orchestrate the traffic lights in your city. So that may be how the Chinese get a foot into the door. That's at least her consideration. Recently, the US government has also banned a number of Chinese corporations for rights abuses in China. You must know that a lot of these Chinese companies claim to be independent, like this institute that's totally financed by the EU and carries its name. But in reality, they are run by the sons of a government official or the daughter or the sister and so forth of people who are connected to the administration in China. And so Huawei, but also a host of Chinese tech and surveillance companies such as the video surveillance giants Hikvision and Dahua technologies, technologies, and the facial recognition systems McVoy, Yichu, and SenseTime. These companies are all central pillars of Chinese smart city ecosystem and have been listed for two main reasons. Because the US administration considers them as potentially able to conduct cyber espionage and sabotage, and therefore to pose a security risk, but also because some of them are operating in Xinjiang. Several US senators have welcomed the inclusion of some companies on the blacklist on the grounds that they are contributing to human rights abuses in China's western province. So the next thing she describes is how this technology is already being pandered across Southeast Asia. This matters, for instance, in Southeast Asia, where Huawei is is a well-established telecommunication player. Several countries of the region such as the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, remain interested in Huawei's offers, including 4G and 5G networks, in spite of US warnings about the company and political cybersecurity risks that accompany such offers. This is partly due to the fact that most US companies at this point in time do not have 5G technological capabilities equivalent to Huawei's. As I said, this is not a matter of capabilities. I think that will be ramped up very quickly. The pitfall of hers is that she thinks this of technology, where selling the technologies that are more integrated than they actually are. And so she arises. Development is also foreseeable. I mean, that the Chinese stuff were more attractive, apparently, is foreseeable because China is increasingly able to provide a comprehensive smart city package which links components together based on partnership among its national tech companies. And these partnerships, of course, they are all one thing, namely the Chinese government, and they are all related to one another because they are siblings and so forth. Data collection efforts are facilitated by the fact that China has now national champions in the internet and e-commerce, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and Xiaomi, among other BATX. Alternatives to the American GAFAM, that is Google, Amazon, whatever, Microsoft and some other American companies, which have a presence and ambitions to expand. The national champion is quite an interesting terminology, because our economics minister for economics, Peter Altmaier, was using that terminology in order to say that he wants the government to build companies, large companies, and kind of combine free market companies to bigger ones. This is something we already have in East Germany under the dictatorship. And when he said that the government should maybe combine smaller companies, smaller businesses to big corporations, he used the word national champions. And when he did so, people, of course, were reminded, and he was saying, no, I'm for free market, I'm for free market, I'm for free market. And, I thought, the lady's protesting too much. So now she offers a little bit more criticism. Beyond business competition, China's smart city project poses a normative challenge, as it promotes an alternative model of local government. That's what I mentioned before. Your municipality may think differently than your national government. This in turn creates a coordination challenge. European cities and other local authorities are increasingly being approached by Chinese counterparts to smarten their infrastructure. Smart cities, but also smart ports, airports, railway stations, etc. By the way, they actually buy ports right now. There's a much bigger risk involved in them having actual control of the stakes of these things. It's not so much the gadgets they try to sell, because you can judge them one by one. And I also believe that most municipalities are not happy about surveillance. I would even say that your local governments are least likely to engage in surveillance and are happy to let the Chinese in, The Chinese tech companies are conscious of the fact that this is a priority for many authorities, and also aware that these partners tend to take decisions with fewer strategic security concerns in mind than at a higher national. The reverse is probably true. The pandemic has accelerated the EU's and its member states' strategic discussions on the use of tech tools in an urban environment. In April 2020, the European Commission published guidance on the development of new apps, including tracing apps, and support the fight against the coronavirus by taking data protection into account. This is also absurd, because the framework these administrators came up with is now dead on GitHub. It's dead. Nobody's working on it anymore. There had been some renegade professors who have created a separate project that is now concerned with the actual security of your phone. So once tracking data becomes a thing, and I actually think we won't reach that state at all for a different set of reasons, but if that should be a thing, there will be a different application available that is not what the EU has prepared to. Failure to do so may result in European cities having to rely on foreign technologies, but also in European cities becoming steadily but surely antiquated, uncompetitive, and or unsafe in comparison with cities in other regions which have fully integrated technologies into their functioning. What I find interesting here is that she doesn't take into account that actually all big technological companies right now are in America, if not in China. And so it is that Europe has to build up all of that on its own, just because she tells them to do so. She also continues with saying that we should be ambitious about this, and this is the answer Europe has for everything. We just have to be a bit more ambitious, and with ambition they just mean let's throw some taxpayer money into a corner. But the reality is that all the innovation and so forth is happening in America because America doesn't have as much red tape. They are freer to think, they are freer to try and error. So in order to have the success America had, we also have to become a bit more like America. But this is a route she is probably not prepared to go down. That was it for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.